Right now, one country makes almost a third of everything manufactured on planet Earth. Not a third of what America buys, a third of everything on this entire planet. More than the US, Japan, and Germany combined. And yes, we checked that math twice because it sounded fake. Here's the part that should keep you up at night. In 1980, this same country made about 5% of the world's manufactured goods. Today, it's closer to 30. That is not a growth curve. That is a hostile takeover of the global economy, and it happened so gradually most of us never even noticed we were standing on top of it. And right now, that foundation is starting to crack. Quietly, in ways almost nobody outside of finance Twitter is paying attention to. This is the story of how China became the world's factory and the deeply uncomfortable story of what happens to the rest of us on the day it stops. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you're going to look at literally everything in your house differently. Let's rewind to 1978. China is not an industrial superpower. China is, frankly, a disaster. Mao is dead. The Cultural Revolution just spent a decade gutting the economy, shutting down universities, and turning expertise into a dirty word. The country can barely feed itself, let alone manufacture anything anyone on Earth actually wants to buy. Enter Deng Xiaoping, 5 foot tall, twice purged by his own party, and somehow about to engineer the single greatest economic transformation in recorded history. Deng's official strategy, and we are not making this up, was described as crossing the river by feeling for the stones. Translated for the rest of us, nobody had a plan. They were making it up one cautious step at a time, terrified of drowning the entire economy in the process. The first stone was a fishing town called Shenzhen. In 1980, this place had a few thousand people, a border checkpoint, and basically nothing else going on. Deng designated it a special economic zone, rock-bottom taxes, cheap land, and permission to let foreign money in the door, something that would have gotten you labeled a traitor to the revolution 10 years earlier. Within 5 years, Shenzhen's economy was 14 times bigger. 14 times. A sleepy fishing village had in half a decade outgrown entire countries. And here's your open loop for the video, because we are absolutely coming back to this. Every single piece of this strategy depended on one resource China had more of than literally anyone else on the planet. Hundreds of millions of people willing to work factory floors for wages that made Western manufacturers weep with joy. Fast forward to December 2001. China joins the World Trade Organization, and this is the moment the training wheels come completely off. Tariffs collapse. Foreign investment doesn't trickle in, it floods in. China's exports don't just grow, they detonate. Roughly 30% a year, more than double the growth rate from the years before accession. Somewhere around this exact moment, a toy company executive in Ohio is looking at a spreadsheet and realizing it is now mathematically insane to manufacture anywhere else. By 2010, China quietly overtakes the United States as the largest manufacturer on Earth, a title America had held since roughly the Civil War. Nobody threw a parade. Nobody even really announced it. It just happened. The way a friend's little side hustle quietly becomes their entire personality, and you don't notice until they've already quit their day job. This right here is the boom. And like every single boom this channel has ever covered, every empire, every tycoon, every company that thought the good times were the permanent state of the universe, the boom is exactly where the trouble gets planted. Because the world's factory isn't just a nickname, it's a dependency. Somewhere in the last 25 years, the entire global economy made an unspoken bet that one country would always be the cheapest option, always be the fastest option, and always simply be available. Nobody voted on this, nobody signed a treaty. It just became true, one supply chain at a time, until nearly every industry on the planet was quietly resting on a single foundation, thousands of miles wide and one country deep. And foundations built that fast tend to develop cracks. Let's go through them one at a time, because there are 4 now, and each one is worse than the last. Crack number 1, real estate. Local governments in China figured out that selling land to developers was an incredible way to fund literally everything. Schools, roads, salaries, you name it. So they leaned on property construction the way a college freshman leans on a first credit card. Enter Evergrande. Once the country's top-selling developer and eventually crowned the most indebted real estate company on the entire planet, owing north of $300 billion to banks, suppliers, and bondholders. Picture the boardroom. Somebody says, "We need more growth this quarter." Somebody else says, "Just start another tower." A third voice, quieter, asks, "Who's actually buying these units?" And the answer every single time was some version of someone. Eventually, probably repeat that conversation a few thousand times across 2 decades, and you get entire skylines built on a foundation of probably. When Evergrande finally collapsed into liquidation, it left behind entire cities of apartment towers, fully constructed, fully wired, completely empty, monuments to an economy that had spent 2 decades building first and asking questions never. Crack number 2. And honestly, this one might be the scariest because there is no policy fix for it. China is running out of the one resource that built the entire miracle in the first place. Births have been falling for years. The total population has now shrunk for 4 consecutive years running. And the working-age population, the actual humans who staff the factory floors, is contracting by millions annually. The generation that built modern China was willing to grind on an assembly line for low wages. The generation replacing them is smaller in number, and according to basically every labor economist who studies this, considerably less enthusiastic about factory work as a life plan. You cannot subsidize your way out of a shrinking birth rate from 25 years ago. That ship, quite literally, has already not sailed. Crack number 3. The rest of the world finally noticed the dependency, and it made everyone deeply, geopolitically uncomfortable. Starting around 2018 and escalating hard through 2025, the US and China slid into a full-blown tariff war at points. Effective tariffs on Chinese goods climbed north of 40%, compared to roughly half that for countries like Vietnam or Thailand. Companies that spent 30 years carefully building supply chains inside China are now scrambling in real time to build a backup plan, just in case. And crack number 4 is the one almost nobody talks about at the dinner table, but should absolutely terrify anyone who understands leverage. China doesn't just make the phones. It controls an enormous share of the rare earth minerals and processing capacity that go inside them. The stuff used in everything from EV batteries to fighter jets. Decades of "let's let China handle the messy, unprofitable mining and refining step" turned into China now holds a choke point over materials nobody else on Earth can currently produce at scale. It's one thing to lose your factory. It's another thing entirely to lose the factory that makes the raw ingredients everyone else's factories need just to open in the morning. So here's where we close our open loop. Remember that supposedly unlimited well of cheap labor that built this entire empire? It's not unlimited anymore. It's aging. It's shrinking. It's getting more expensive every single year. And the customers who once had nowhere else to go are now actively, aggressively building a somewhere else. Vietnam, India, Mexico, all racing to become the next China, none of them quite there yet. Foxconn, the exact company that basically built the iPhone supply chain inside China in the first place, is now dumping billions into Vietnamese plants instead. Imagine spending 30 years building the perfect factory, only to watch your biggest client quietly start building a second one somewhere else, just to be safe. Which finally brings us to the question this whole video promised you an answer to. What actually happens if the world's factory stops? Okay, say it really happens. Say the slowdown that's already visibly underway, the shrinking workforce, the property crash draining local government budgets dry, the tariff walls going up brick by brick, the rare earth chokehold turning into an actual weapon, actually compounds into a real sustained pullback in Chinese manufacturing. What does that look like, industry by industry for you specifically, sitting wherever you're sitting right now? Take electronics first, because it's the most exposed. Your phone, your laptop, half the guts of your car, all of it runs through a Chinese supply chain so tightly optimized that a single closed factory in Shenzhen can ripple into shortages on shelves in Ohio within weeks. Apple has already poured billions into shifting iPhone assembly toward India and Vietnam, and it's still, by its own admission, years away from truly replicating what China built. Short term here, expect price hikes, not price stability. Take apparel and low-cost goods next, the stuff that built China's reputation in the first place. This is actually the easiest category to move, and it's already moving fast toward Vietnam and Bangladesh. So if your biggest worry is the price of a t-shirt, you'll probably be fine. It's everything more complex than a t-shirt where the real exposure lives. And take autos and batteries, arguably the scariest category of all, because this is where the rare earth's choke point and the manufacturing base collide directly. Electric vehicles worldwide run on battery supply chains that are overwhelmingly dependent on Chinese processing capacity. You cannot China plus one your way out of a mineral refining bottleneck in 18 months. That one takes actual years, and actual minds, and actual money nobody has fully committed yet. Medium term, the entire China plus one bet either pays off or it spectacularly doesn't. Vietnam, India, and Mexico are genuinely growing fast. Vietnam alone has become a real smartphone assembly powerhouse, and India is chasing a serious slice of iPhone production. But none of them, individually or even combined, currently have anywhere close to China's scale, its infrastructure, or its almost unnervingly efficient web of factories that all sit within a day's drive of each other. Replacing the world's factory isn't like swapping out one vendor for another. It's like trying to replace a heart with 3 kidneys and just hoping the math somehow works out. Long term, and here's the genuinely unsettling part, the part that should actually change how you think about the news you scroll past, a slower China doesn't just mean pricier sneakers and a more expensive phone upgrade. It means a fundamental renegotiation of who holds economic leverage over the entire planet. For 50 years, a staggering chunk of global stability has quietly rested on one single country being willing and able to make everything, cheaply, forever. That assumption is now being tested in real time, not primarily by tariffs, not primarily by politicians, but by China's own demographics, which nobody in any government can simply legislate away. So maybe the real story here was never really about factories at all. Maybe it's about what happens when the entire world quietly builds its future on top of one country's ability to keep saying yes and forgets to ever ask what happens on the day it finally has to say no. Because empires almost never announce their own decline. They don't send out a press release. They just quietly start shrinking. One closed factory, one empty apartment tower, one missing worker at a time, until one day the rest of the world looks around and realizes the foundation it built everything on top of was never as permanent as it looked. If this is the kind of story you didn't know you needed, the kind where boring economic history turns out to be the most quietly terrifying thing you'll watch all week, hit subscribe. Bankrupt Kings breaks down a new financial empire, scandal or collapse every single week. And trust us, the next one falls just as hard as this one did.